Hello, and welcome to today's lecture on Apollo. I'm your professor, Dr. Rob Steffen, and today we are going to talk about the god of wisdom, the sun, healing, music, poetry, and much, much more. But Apollo isn't only the god of those things. He's also an oracular god, meaning that people look to him to help normal people interpret the will of the gods. So whether you want to get high on fumes or are simply looking to bask in the sun, journey with me as we investigate Apollo, the oracular god.
The birth story of Apollo starts similarly to so many other Greek myths. Zeus's eyes are wandering away from Hera, and this time he falls for Leto, the daughter of two titans. After Zeus and Leto consummate their relationship, Leto becomes pregnant with twins, and Hera is none too happy. And this time she's not messing around. She sends a snake-like dragon, known as the Python, to chase pregnant Leto to the ends of the earth, declaring that Leto will never be able to give birth on any land.
Now, after immense amounts of wandering for Leto, Apollo, from inside the womb, tells his mom about the floating island of Delos. And the idea is perhaps because it's floating and not touching the earth, she can actually give birth there. And so they go to the island of Delos, and hanging from a palm tree, Leto gives birth to Artemis and Apollo. And Artemis actually comes out first and then helps her mom deliver her brother Apollo. And then Apollo secures the island, the floating island, to the earth, and it becomes a sacred island within the Cycladic Islands of the Aegean. From then on out, it's going to be sacred to the god Apollo. And one of the super cool things is that Delos never really gets built over, not in the medieval period or the Renaissance or even the modern period. And so when you go there today, it's like one giant archaeological site, all sacred to the god Apollo.
But the newborn twins and their mom weren't out of danger. The terrifying Python still stood between them and a peaceful upbringing. But now the tables had turned, and this time it was Apollo hunting the beast. After tracking the Python across Greece, he finally cornered it on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the site of Delphi. There, with his bow, he slew the mighty dragon, which plummeted into a deep chasm within the earth.
And so we see the bow as one of the symbols of the god Apollo. And it turns out that it's actually one of the things very closely associated with his sister Artemis as well. We also see Delphi become very closely associated with the god Apollo, and we'll hear just how important that site is in a little bit. You can also recognize Apollo by his carrying of the lyre, the musical instrument, and that signals his connection both to music and to poetry.
After Apollo killed the Python, the site of Delphi became the most famous sanctuary on mainland Greece. A temple was erected over the chasm into which the dragon plummeted, and within the innermost sanctuary of this temple, known as the Adaton in Greek, was the Pythia, the leading priestess of Apollo, better known to us today as the Oracle of Delphi. The Pythia sat in a chamber above the chasm, and the toxic fumes, which emerged from the slain Python, supposedly put her into a frenzy, giving her the gift of the gods and allowing her prophetically to answer questions from some of the world's most influential leaders.
Now, the site of Delphi is famous for more than just the oracle. In ancient Greece, it was also considered the center of the world. And the story behind this is that Zeus sends two of his eagles, right, his most sacred bird, around the earth in opposite directions. And it's at the point where they crisscross on the far side of the earth, well, we know that's the middle. And it just turns out that's where Delphi is. And to mark this center, right, they put a stone, the Omphalos stone, which marks the belly button of Gaia, right? The center of Earth itself. And somewhat amazingly, we still have the archaeological remains of the omphalos stone in the museum at Delphi. We still have that marker of the center of the Earth.
In Greek antiquity, the site of Delphi was important for more than just the oracle. It was a pan-Hellenic sanctuary, meaning that people from city-states all across the Greek world would come to worship Apollo. And Delphi also had a set of athletic games, similar to the Olympics. These were known as the Pythian Games, and you can still visit the stadium where these games occurred, high above the Temple of Apollo on the slopes of Mount Parnassus.
Now, you can imagine just how important these pan-Hellenic sanctuaries and pan-Hellenic athletic games were in Greek antiquity, when many of these city-states are often at war not with other people, but with each other. And so sites like Delphi gave the Greeks a place to come together and unite, and so that eventually they can take on bigger challenges like the Persian Empire.
In addition to being the god of music and wisdom and the bow and the sun, Apollo was also one of the major gods associated with healing. This is, in part, his own doing, and partially the result of his son, Asclepius, who grows up to become the god of medicine. Going all the way back to Homer's Iliad, Apollo is seen as a healer. But just as much as he heals, he also has the ability to wreak havoc with destruction and plague.
Now, Apollo's son Asclepius is literally the god of medicine. And this comes about when Apollo goes and hooks up with a mortal woman, Coronis. And that's all fine and good for a while, but eventually Coronis, well, she goes and hooks up with a mortal man. And Apollo is furious that after hooking up with him, she could ever hook up with a mortal man. And so what happens is he throws her in to a giant blazing fire. And only then does he remember that his unborn son is inside of there. And so he sends Hermes, the messenger god, to go retrieve his son. And then boom, you got Asclepius.
One of the largest sanctuaries to the god Asclepius is at the site of Epidaurus in the Argolid. This sanctuary wasn't just a temple, it was an entire complex. It did, of course, have a temple to Asclepius, but it also had a massive guest house with over 100 rooms, a set of baths, and a freshwater spring, all of which played a role in the healing process. Most intriguingly, however, was the Abaton, an underground chamber where the sick would sleep. During the night, snakes slithered across the floor, and the god was supposed to come to the sick and inform them of how to heal themselves.
And if you got bit by a snake, well, that was good luck. But Epidaurus isn't just known for its healing complex. It's also got one of the best preserved theaters in the ancient Greek world. And it's not just known for its preservation. This thing was built in a manner so that it's acoustically perfect, meaning that if you drop a pin in the center of the theater, somebody sitting in the very, very top row, they can hear that pin drop. Pretty impressive engineering feat for something 2,500 years ago. And it turns out that's a very fitting place for both music and poetry recitation. Another couple things Apollo is the god of.
While Apollo's twin sister Artemis is a virgin, Apollo is, well, certainly not that. We saw that his relationship with Coronis didn't end well. Most relationships where people are thrown into a roaring fire usually fail. But Apollo has a slew of other relationships with mortals and immortals, men and women alike. One of the most famous is Apollo's love for Daphne, which came about when he was struck with one of Eros's golden arrows. Daphne was also struck with an arrow, but unfortunately for both of them, this was a leaden arrow of hatred. Apollo pursued her endlessly, and to evade him once and for all, Daphne turned herself into a laurel tree.
And the story of Apollo and Daphne, that indicates Apollo's deep connection to the laurel tree. And we see that the Pythia, Apollo's main priestess at his temple at Delphi, she somehow used the laurel tree in giving her prophecies. And the winners of the Pythian Games, the athletic games that took place at Delphi, they got laurel wreaths as a trophy for their victory, in much the same way that the winners of the Olympic Games got an olive wreath.
Like most of the Greek gods, Apollo really got around. Legend has it that he slept with all 9 of the Greek muses, which reinforces his connection with both music and poetry. And he had children with several of those muses. Mortal women were fair game too. With Hecuba, the wife of King Priam of Troy, Apollo sired Troilus. And it was said that Troy would never fall if Troilus made it to the age of 20. But just short of that time, Achilles killed the son of Apollo, and Achilles' famous death at the bow of Paris is in large part Apollo's vengeance for that murder.
Now, the list of Apollo's relationships goes on and on and on. And his list of failed relationships is basically just as long. But I guess when you're the god of wisdom and music and poetry, well, you can charm a lover pretty much anywhere.
One of Apollo's main festivals, the Hyacinthian, comes from his love for the young man Hyacinthus. A Spartan prince, Hyacinthus was strong and beautiful and athletic, and one day Apollo and Hyacinthus were out training. Throwing the discus to be exact. When one of Apollo's throws was blown off course by Zephyrus, the jealous west wind, and the discus smashed into poor young Hyacinthus' head, killing him instantaneously.
Now, Apollo, in his grief, created the hyacinth flower out of the blood of the dead prince. And as he sat with the flower, weeping over it, tears falling upon it, as his tears fell upon the petals, they formed the Greek word for alas. And when you look at the petals of the hyacinth flower today, you can still see that design on the petals themselves.
Eventually, Hyacinthus was remembered in a 3-day festival to the god Apollo, the Hyacinthian, which focuses on the idea of ritualized loss. On the first day, Hyacinthus is mourned, and sacrifices are made at his tomb. A somber moment indeed. On day 2, however, the participants process from Sparta to Amyclae and participate in athletic contests. A day of great happiness. Day 3 is still a mystery to us, but most scholars think that it built on the joy of the previous day.
And so the emotion of loss comes full circle. The sadness of the first day is acknowledged and embraced, but it gives way on the second day to interaction and competition and joy and reverence for the god Apollo. And in addition to all this, the ritual itself is part of an initiatory process for young men. They start this process being boys, and going through the ritual, they come out on the other side being a full-grown man. So Apollo is the god of many good things, right? Healing and wisdom and poetry and music and the sun. But he's not afraid to be a little destructive too. So much of the destruction at Troy is because Apollo's out to get Achilles. And a site like Delphi, a Pan-Hellenic sanctuary, is absolutely crucial in the ancient Greek world for uniting these independent Greek city-states. Now, Apollo was also a lover of many people. But even when that love didn't turn out so well, loss could eventually turn into joy. Just a couple lessons you can learn from Apollo, the oracular god.